Well, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm actually with Teller as well. I'm one of the founders there. And that's,
Cool. The auto people are familiar with Teller here. Me, Mike, and Brenda. As far as things, yeah, I mean, as far as things we can sort of talk about, the auto generally, like whenever it was, we had formed, super brief history. We had formed it kind of after like DevCon in Japan, whatever year that was, and then people had actually been doing previous work to sort of come up with Oracle standards before, and we had went and talked with them. And kind of going forward, so like, what are the things that like a group or, people in the Oracle space should work, and maybe coordinating would be a good idea, and like what can we do? And generally, like we've come up with quite a few areas. The first one is like just like an Oracle standard. So like, like we had EIP, I don't even know what number, 256233, something some number, 2362, I believe. But yeah, we had that one that was like an EIP for a pull Oracle, as far as how do you make like a standard Solidity interface, and then the other things that we had sort of started talking about, but then kind of all of this, nothing has really necessarily materialized. But you would say like you can look at like the data specs. So like how do you define certain pieces of data, whether it's like, you could theoretically come up with a council for defining, what is the reference implementation for the ETH US dollar price, for instance, or, like a set of standard APIs to have more sort of concrete information on, okay, well, how do you define what some of these definitions are, and what is a good quality piece of data? Similar like government agencies do this for, like whenever you're looking at like futures contracts or something like that. If you have like, like, well, how do you settle the reference price for what is, oil? And there's all these things, and they have to be approved a lot of times for registered contracts. And, like we could act as say that body. I know APA3, for instance, is doing certain things with that where they have these very strict definitions, and you could expand on some of their work. And the last thing that we had sort of, we've put out a lot of information, and some other people are as well, but what's our general, just as a space, that there's a lot of things like we noticed that mainly like most of our job as far as like being, working in the Oracle space isn't necessarily, like choose us over another Oracle. It's like just best practices for Oracles. Like, how do you teach people, like, hey, this is, like you should think about this when using any Oracle, regardless of whether it's Teller or Witnet or APA3 or Chainlink. Like these are just best practices you should do. And there's sort of just been a void as far as teaching people educational information on the differences between the Oracles, and then educational information on just what's the best practice regarding, if you're reading data on chain, like you should probably know things about finality. You should probably know things about, okay, well, what are dispute considerations? What are, how can the validators mess with the data that you're putting on chain? How can, what should you do regarding, timestamps, and a lot of different pieces, and just teaching users about those things is very, very important. So those are kind of the three areas I would break down that, those were kind of the goals. And so where as far as they're at, so we made the, we sort of came up with an Oracle standard, and then basically nobody's used it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, you can just be honest, like there's most projects, like just the way they work, it's such an afterthought, as far as for the Oracle projects themselves. And then especially the users, like what you found is that like it's relatively trivial to make like an extra interface for connecting to these things. And the reason that you're going to pick an Oracle is much bigger than whether or not there's a standard interface. The reason that you choose the Oracle is, it's such an integral part to most of these systems that making a little extra interface is pretty not a deal breaker for any of it. And then same with like on the data specs pieces, most of the time, like people are just starting to think about it now. I think, 2-3 years ago, like that there was obviously like, probably only like 2 or 3 oracles live on Ethereum even. It was very, very few. So like sure, we can talk about any of this stuff, but it really doesn't matter because like you're going to choose basically like if you had a piece of data and you had a network, that was why you picked what you picked as far as the oracle goes. Everything else was, you didn't care. But we're starting to get into a world where more and more people are, there's more oracles, there's more use cases. So we could maybe do some of this stuff and moving forward. I don't know what that's going to look like. And, maybe you guys have some good ideas about who's going to put in some work and who's going to talk about these things. But yeah, that's what we've been kind of thinking about and hopefully been iterating on for the past few years. So I'll open up the floor or keep it there.
Sounds like the Oracle's foundation. Some kind of legal thing happening. The Oracle's network state. Some kind of organization material would real help in our industry to unite us more. That's why I'm here showing up also. I'm passionate about uniting. I'd actually love to hear from those that are new here in this chat. Anything that you're observing, anything you'd like to bring in? Like Steve, maybe you want to talk?
Oh, sorry, I was confused by your inquiry. You're asking like my feedback on what everyone's talking about in the Telegram chat, or you just want my general thoughts?
Yeah, general thoughts.
Go for it.
Okay. Sorry, I was just confused by that question. No, it's all good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for putting this together. I'm really excited about this. The whole database pieces part, I don't know if I can add a lot of color to, but perhaps I just missed some scope. I was just typing out some notes as you were kind of explaining there, Nick. But as for the Oracle standard, I had a meeting with Halcyon. I don't know if you know him. I think he's more working on like layer 2 Chainlink stuff. He's a Chainlink biz dev, I believe, or whatever. Everyone has different titles now. And basically, like, this is how I kind of got involved with the ADO. Like, I met Brenda in Denver this year, had a quick chat, and I was talking about just like, with my experience, like working for different protocols in the past. Everyone kind of ends up making like their own bespoke kind of Oracle solution or Oracle system, let's call it, right? And that's fair, but I think there is some room for like some standardization. And then this is before I checked out your guys' GitHub and the standard you had made. I checked it out, made sense. I was like, okay, cool. But after talking with Chainlink, I might like I have some like thoughts to kind of like kick off possibly like this repo that I'm working on that I'm happy to work on with others, where it's just basically, similar ideas to what you guys have for your standard, but I'm going to take like a really iterative approach. I'm not saying you guys didn't, I'm just talking about what I'm looking at doing. A really iterative approach on different extensions, because like the keyword is Oracle system. And so like in the design I was working on a stablecoin project similar to like Aave Go's framework for about a year. And with that, we were kind of like thinking about it. And like with Liquidity, for example, they have like a fallback and a primary Oracle setup, right? Now, normally Halcyon at Chainlink went on, and he's just like, you would pick your primary, and it really depends on the quality of your Oracle's systems, right? Like Chainlink versus XYZ, Teller versus XYZ, right? Arguably you would have like a good primary versus a good fallback, right? You have to think about the quality, but regardless of that, like that nuance, he was saying that an extension contract and like a standard that uses that extension contract that helps basically walk through developers on like creating a good fallback and primary system would be really helpful. That's one. And then he also mentioned, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. He mentioned like maybe while I find that, like, is there any thoughts on that? Like, basically what I'm imagining is like I can share the link to my private repo. It's nothing really serious right now, but essentially it's like, like you would have a like Oracle.sol, for lack of a better term. In that you could like specify certain details. And similar to like just any other any other Open Zeppelin smart contract like standard, you would have extension folder, right? And that would inherit that base Oracle contract. And those extensions would be like, for example, fallback primary setup, right? Is Oracle. And then it would have like everything in there, like the getters and setters to make that all legit. And then the second one, another one that I'm trying to find is like, I think it's like aggregating. Yeah, just like the aggregation logic. Like that itself is like a huge rabbit hole. And he's like, if someone could work on that, like standardizing like at least accepted ways currently on like aggregation logic and creating extension on that, then that would be cool too. Because like who's to say like 5 Oracle sets are good enough for aggregation? 6, 10, like how do you even like make them compare? Am I ranting too much? Does this all make sense? So yeah, what's everyone's thoughts?
Yeah, I really like the setting up the primary fallback structure. That would probably be very helpful for people. We tend to like we're the fallback in Liquidity, for instance, and you get a lot of people who just like come in and fork Liquidity, Liquidity's oracles, and that's like sort of become, like I would say, like that's almost become the de facto standard in a lot of way for people creating this fallback method. And but yeah, like actually having it more explicitly in one repo where you don't have to go figure it out yourself and update the Solidity code, that would probably definitely be helpful. And yeah, on the aggregation techniques, like there's pros and cons when you talk about different aggregation techniques, and I think that's more of the trade-off piece. Whether if you're like medianizing the various oracles, a lot of times the quality, if you're medianizing 3 oracles, like it's hard to find it's hard to find 3 oracles for any piece of data on Ethereum, like, and Ethereum's like the best network. And then second of all, like, there's vastly different amounts of quality and risks in those 3. Like the risks for Chainlink, for instance, like they just have they're crazy cheap for most users, and they're very, very reliable, but there's this crazy existential centralization risk, and there's 0 liveness guarantee in case they decide to shut it off on you. So like, how do you play that? An oracle that's a good fallback for Chainlink would theoretically have different risks than that. And so pairing them, it's all super custom. So like how you talk users through it is going to be, like you might just want to like set up base ones, like this setup pairs well together and works. But yeah, because like plugging and playing and cutting and pasting different ones, like you could get different problems.
Even if the plug and play part of it doesn't work, like any framework that we come up with that gets people in the conversation about the different spokes of the wheel, the different extensions, anything that just gets them in that mindset to have those discussions, I think is 99% of the battle, even if it's not going to always be as easy to just swap things out willy-nilly.
Yeah, on that note, if you don't mind, like I'll share my screen, entire screen, share. And like, basically when I was working on that stablecoin project, like I basically was tasked with create our Oracle system. And in doing so, like I have a more detailed like Figma, but I created this at least as a generic one, and I can send the link. And basically I was hoping to like facilitate that conversation, right? Like walk through someone and say like, decide on your type of Oracle, right? And then eventually they get to, okay, design a contingency. And in there, okay, figure out all these details. There will probably be like layers to this, right? Almost like a multiplex of setups. And then on top of that, I had this like thread that I was hoping
Steve,
to collaborate with other people, like protocols. To like,
Steve, I don't think we all see what you're sharing. Can you check?
Oh, I've never used this software, so this is weird. Okay, you see it now? All right, cool.
Yes.
So here's the Figma. I just like ran through quickly, and I'll share this link if you guys are interested. I'd love to collaborate with people and like make this more of something, right? As like a facilitation, like conversation piece. And as I was saying, it's like essentially At the very beginning of all this, you need to like think about like just like what are you even doing? Like what are you using this Oracle solution for, right? Liquidity, it made sense with their stablecoin setup, etc. And then decide on the type of Oracle. Are you doing price feeds? Are you doing TWAP? That's why I had that conversation with Chainlink. Initially, it's like they have different requirements, right, for a price feed, especially for your stablecoin. You need good TVL. You need to be on like 3 to 5 DEXs, etc. DEX/central exchanges. Once you do that, right, there's other nuances with TWAPs, but we won't get into that. Then you pick your Oracle type, and then you actually get like data responses. I have another, as I think I mentioned before, I have another Figma. It has more detail, and I'm like talking like Silo Finance and like other protocols. They asked me to like keep some of their designs like off off this generic one, since they're trying to be a little tight to the chest on it. And then contingency designs, though, like as I just mentioned, like, and as you had pointed out, I think Nick, like, and Mike, like, where I'd love to just facilitate conversation with this. I kind of envision like multiple layers. Like you can just like imagine like multiple ones of this, right? Like over and over again, where you might have like, yeah, like different setups that you could just like propose to people and they could at least use it and have something you can discuss on together. Because I think it's just like hard to envision sometimes, especially when you're like newer to Oracles, like all the nuances involved. So I find like Figma is good. And then on that note, like another like thing to kind of hopefully facilitate conversation and whatnot is like this thread I had drafted up like months ago. Basically just calling out like, hey, we need to like think about Oracles, and maybe I'm just naive and don't know enough, but this is kind of what I picked up from like my own research of like looking at Sam Aziz's son's like blog post like years ago, TWAP design, Euler before the hack, but I don't think it had anything to do with Oracles. And then like just onward like discussion. So I'd love to kind of like facilitate or like, I don't know, just collaborate with any of you to like, I can share this link for this Figma as well as this thread, and then happy to kind of like push out more thoughts and work on a repo together. So just wanted to share that.
I think it would be helpful to include, I think it's been doing some deep dives on the different protocols, because when people are actually choosing their oracles, for them to really understand the different attack vectors and be able to pair them in a way that they are different so that it's difficult to actually attack them, they need to understand each one of the protocols to begin with. I know Nick has done a few deep dives. I mean, you can go through those, or if you decide to write something on them. But I think that's the very first conversation that they have to have. It's what oracles can we use or pair up in a smart way, and they can be included in that thread. I feel like that's very useful. We do, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sorry, I thought you meant like protocols. Yeah, you're referring to like the data feed oracles, let's say like price feeds, or like the DEX oracles, like, or DEXs that oracles are based off, like just in general, like all relevant
Not
code
just
and protocols.
Sources, but the actual like how different how different and difficult would it be to attack Witnet versus it is to attack Teller versus it is to attack Chainlink. And then, because there's two portions to the oracles, right? It's like the initial attack vectors will probably be, or the two types. It's the oracle itself, and when I'm talking the oracle, I'm not talking about the nodes providing the data. I'm talking about the actual infrastructure that either Teller or Witnet or Chainlink have. Versus, so that's one way that you can attack the actual input or the actual data sources, which is, you know, the APIs, data manipulation, or asset manipulation. So that those are the two different vectors. But what I'm saying is like the first, I guess, conversation is like which oracle should we use, and for them to understand the different attack vectors of each, they need to understand how they work.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of data feeds and like actually coming up with a robust definition for what they need, that's the other component. But I was just suggesting that since Nick has done a few of the deep dives on the different protocols, those would be good to include in your.
Yeah, because it's not just like what they're providing, it's how they provide it. And understanding that might also inform your decision on primary and backup, right? You would want them to have like a different set of attack vectors. versus two similar sets, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's all really great feedback. So it sounds like I should just share the links to what I just discussed inside that Telegram group chat. Like I don't want to spam the other 60 people in there.
Spam them.
So, okay, all right. But yeah, then I'm happy to collaborate with like Nick or whoever. Just jump on that. Just ping me. We can do it all async, so that we don't take up this call. But shoot, I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, like so. I'm also writing up like DeFi challenges. So basically, I'm with like Austin Griffith, if you guys know who that is. So I've been writing tutorials for him for like the last year and a bit, but like just off and on when I find time. But lately, I've actually been writing like I'm almost done like this year in strategy DeFi tutorial. Basically, because like the whole nuance, the TLDR is like there's a lot of beginner developer stuff out there, but there's not a lot of intermediate to senior stuff, like how to actually integrate with like real DeFi or real like protocols on mainnet or whatever, real mainnet. So that would involve oracles as well. So I really want to make a DeFi challenge that basically educates people on oracles. So it's kind of like DevRel as a service almost, but for free as a public good through Austin, because he's sponsored by the Ethereum Foundation, if you don't know, to some degree. So yeah, I think this like would work really well with ADO and to collaborate there. So it's just like getting as many like brains together to like make sure we do this right, and we can do it in like a series of different challenges. But anyways, I'm just kind of like throwing down everything I'm working on that's related to oracles. I think it'd be good to start with like that thread as well as that Figma, get on the same page, and then the Oracle challenge will come at some point. So that's all I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, and then if you want to contribute, there is like an auto GitHub. You know, nobody really uses it, but feel free to make pull requests. You know, you can store best practices stuff there. Anything. It's pretty open. And then yeah, Matt, Marcus, you guys have been quiet. Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, Marcus, go on. You were first.
Yeah. Thanks. Then I just pretty much agree. I think for a more secure DeFi future, we need a multi-oracle solution, and having standards on how to do that, I think, is the good thing to do. I'm happy to collaborate where we can to move this forward, either update the old standard or work on this new updated one. I think it's really interesting, and I agree with Brenda that it's a lot of education that would also have to go around it, just so people actually understand, like she was saying, the differences of the oracles and what she would actually be, or what people would actually be implementing. I think that's a great idea, and I'm here for it.
I mean, probably maybe thinking like the other way around on the chart that, Steve, you have shown. I think that there is also like a potential to try to think about it, like the whole flow starting from the actual like client segment, because there is some similarities between, how lending markets implement oracles, or how options protocols implement oracles, or how stablecoin protocols integrate oracles. And there is also like some attack vectors on the sort of oracle side. So there is like the decentralization concerns with chaining, just a couple of different stuff with different oracles. But there's also a lot of attack vectors on the sort of client side. So let's say Aave has this kind of dependency in their code, which could be used. And like probably most of the lending markets have the same kind of dependency, because Aave is like the market standard if it comes to lending markets. And there is a lot of variables here. And if you add the variables on the Oracle side as well, you get like an infinite number of attack vectors that we can't really, see. Just looking from the Oracle perspective to the client perspective, not the client's perspective to the Oracle perspective. So I don't really have like anything like structured in my head. And probably we need like some more time as an industry to actually come up with these standards coming back from the client side. But probably, I guess, in the future, there's going to be like more. That's what I would like bet on. There's going to be also like a lot of talk about, okay, how should lending markets integrate oracles to be resistant against certain attack vectors? How should options protocols integrate oracles because of how they operate, because how frequently they need to price, because how options work in general as a financial instrument and all of that. So it's perhaps, a lot of to discover. Yeah, but I believe we as an industry don't have like enough data yet, because it's, to be honest, like if you look at the chart at DeFi Llama, right, it's like 50% Chainlink, which is like the market standard. And I'd say most of the oracles are still sort of kind of close to what Chainlink does, like high level. Basically, like all do the same thing, maybe in sort of kind of, different ways, but still it's very, very close. And I believe it's getting more and more, it like diverges more and more. So people experiment a lot. There is a lot of new players coming in. And I believe there is going to be more and more like oracle types, maybe for specific use cases as well in the future. Because right now what we have is like general purpose oracles. I guess that's the only, maybe, some of the oracles call themselves like, okay, we are the ZK oracle, right? Like Pragma on Starknet or Stork on Starknet. But it's like, it's more like specific, not exactly use case specific. Maybe there is going to be, certain oracles for certain use cases in the future as well. But we're not there yet. I believe, the whole space is still like general purpose, is still sort of close to each other, like high level. So perhaps like, just to finish this, this long speech, I believe we need like more data to actually come from the client's perspective to the oracle's perspective. And probably exciting to see, what's going to happen on that front in the upcoming years.
Yeah, that's a really good points. I think we're already starting to see it from at least like based off of like some other chats with other protocols, but also like Chainlink, like I think they just released something for like more focused on like perps, like some type of data feed setup for perps specifically. Yeah, I agree. Like the data side will kind of expose more. We're at the bleeding edge, right? Especially with oracles. With attack vectors and all that, right? It's always a touchy subject, but yeah, bleeding edge of tech. So I think like I really like what the ADO is possibly set up for my comprehension or understanding. It's like some groups of people or everyone can just collaborate on different parts. Like one will definitely be on the research side, like funneling in like the research so that maybe ADO becomes like the voice of like oracles for DeFi. To kind of like say like, hey, this is what's going on like Oracle wise, like research. This is what's happening specifically. And then on like the stuff that I was mentioning, like the standard or the Figma, perhaps we don't bite off more than we can chew. And like start off with say, like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. Like, I'd love to hear what you think, Matt. Like if, so that we don't like things are generic right now. So maybe like a generic Figma plus all those like, plus like threads or blog posts or whatever medium we decide on all the stuff that Brenda had mentioned about like the different attack vectors specific to like different protocols. Maybe that's a good starting point, but I don't know. What do you think? Like that separation of two things, it's like the research side funnels in more info, which is great. And then the standardizing side tries to like make life easier for developers, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to what ADO could be? I don't know.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, no, it's I think there's a lot of places we can take it, and I think it's just going to see as time goes on where we sort of put in the effort and what we do together. So it'll be good, and yeah, hopefully we can all meet up at the Blockchain Oracle Summit. We can hash it out a little bit more, and if anybody wants to work on anything in particular, feel free to jump in the Telegram, post something. We'll always throw in some resources where we can. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Abdul.
Welcome, Abdul.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
I had someone back.
We planned it initially.
I wish I joined earlier.
It's okay. We planned it initially half an hour, but if you would like, just share what you're working on, what you're seeing in the trends in the Oracle space, anything that you'd like to add to this call, and we'll wrap up maybe like in 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can just quickly touch base on what we've been working on since, we're super focused on the Algorand ecosystem. And I think, one cool thing about Algorand is like the transaction fees are almost non-existent. So we can kind of have a different design where we don't have to worry about gas fees. And so, it's I think it was Nick who was in one of his earlier chats was saying, getting the standards is really hard. Everybody's kind of building it differently. And so now we're just at a point where we're trying to teach, or not teach, but like implement or help implement best practices and just make sure that our software is kind of implemented in a way that promotes best practices in a sense. And I really like that idea. And just kind of having standards for how people should think about work. Like, maybe you should take into account how the data or how the Oracle's limitations are, and then just make sure you build around it, things like that.
Abdul, and can you tell for the new people here your background and just where you're at right now? Just wanted to know myself, curious.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I kind of did a little bit both in the business world and the software development world. We were building a sports betting app, which is kind of how we stumbled upon an Oracle, because we needed an Oracle on Algorand and it just wasn't there. And we turned that Oracle started to end up being our main thing because a lot of people also needed an Oracle. And that was fall 2021. And we're just went into audit now, and we're going to be launching soon. And so, yeah, building the Oracles is pretty difficult because like there's so much different pieces. Like there's these node runners who kind of get the data. There's the data providers, there's the customers, right? And then there's the protocol, and they all seem to have slightly different motivations, right? So for me, just kind of coming from the world, like the business world, always trying to think of how to help the stakeholders as much as possible in each scenario. And I think as Oracles, we have our job cut out for us for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Another thing I wanted to run by you guys is we're getting hit because the name Goracle has Oracle in it. We're getting hit by Oracle for copyright infringement. They say they're going to sue us if you don't change our name.
Where did they send this?
Well, they couldn't get a hold of us in America because we're not based there, but they eventually hired some Swiss lawyers, and we just heard about it a couple of weeks ago.
Where did they send it to, though? Like
the cease and desist.
They usually they would have to send like a cease and desist or something, but like where did they send it to?
My email.
How do you know about this? To your email?
Because I live in Finland, and apparently they weren't able to get a hold of me for 6 months in the States.
Okay.
So some lawyer in Switzerland messaged me to my email.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. 29th, and it's like the 29th largest company in the world. Are they gonna monopolize the word Oracle now? You know?
Yeah, tell them to go kick rocks.
Yeah.
Like I'm on Oracle's or a blockchain Oracle on Algorand. Give me a break.
Yeah.
We don't do anything similar to what you guys are doing.
No, they said there's the Oracle blockchain, so that's why there's similarity.
They have a patent on Oracle blockchain?
Trademark, yeah. Sued to Oracle before and won.
Way too late, Oracle.
Jeez.
Way too late.
No, that's hilarious.
Mark my words. Oracle, you are sued, okay, for wasting our time. Another option would be to rename.
No, guys, it's Keys.
like to rename what we do is something that is more like effective for the common people to understand what is it about. Because when I told my people that I'm going to Oracle Summit, everyone's like, what is it exactly? Like still in the Web3 world, even when it comes to a Web3 world that I'm reporting from, the NFT world, the cultural world, right? They have no idea this important piece of, industry. So how do we, with our power, with our communications, with our integrations of our knowledge, can put this name brand on the map of the culture? I'm talking culture. That's kind of my question generally. It's not for anyone here, but it's more of like a goal that I see with Ado, I think, in the future. But yeah, let's see if there's anyone else wants to join and share their voice before we wrap up.
Feel free to brainstorm on a new name. I think at the end of the day, we always have to explain what an oracle is. So whatever.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't know, like Oracle works if you work in the industry, and I understand. Like I feel what you're saying, Nat, regarding like you want to make this understandable and digestible for like the general public. But that all said, it's kind of like the first thing that I think this association does, at least for me, as a developer, is just like it offers like a great starting ground for people to understand more about oracles for developers specifically, right? Because otherwise it's just like you just have to jump into docs, you jump into random discords, you're like it's a complete personally gong show kind of.
Yeah, and I mean I'm joining late, but are we planning to release any kind of like think tank papers or opinions or suggestions or anything like that, or are we just getting started in our brainstorming?
I mean, I would like to see an Oracle paper.
Because we could do
like a white paper edition every quarter with the update, with the key voices that actually participated on creating that update, so that key voices can come and raise in the industry as well. I'd like to see something like that, maybe that is actually printed, that can be distributed. But I love printed stuff. I think it would be cool to come together and compile certain things for educational, and media purposes. Does that make even a sense, or it's too far-fetched for like the Alliance work?
I think that like I'm not really sure everyone's time commitment to the ADO, right? I'm sure everyone has like their own like full-time work and stuff like that. For me personally, like it'll be very like part-time, like contributing, and I'll try to like prioritize like working on the extension standard I had mentioned. But I think you're right. Like it would be cool to have like a white paper or technical paper or technical doc like content come out of the ADO, because that's, I guess, at the end of the day, it's kind of like a branding question. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. Like, it's kind of like, what do you want to start off with to kind of like establish ADO as like the go-to place for oracles? Is it content? If it is content, is it standards? Is it technical white papers? Is it et cetera? Like what? And I don't know who's leading the charge on what to focus on, because like there's like 60 people in that group chat, so I don't really know who's all involved and stuff. So sorry, I just answered your question with more questions.
This is perfect.
I would say just having like a consistency of updating the GitHub and just like actually working on the standards. I like the idea that you have about maybe doing like a quarterly light paper or like an update to what's been going on. I'm not sure if having actual print material would help outside of like a conference aspect. Like maybe if there's a conference like Blockchain Oracle Summit, or a place that like Teller and Witnet and Redstone are going to be at, then maybe like we could pay for that cost. But it just comes to a cost question, and where would the material be distributed? Like I'm not necessarily against printing stuff. Like a lot of times that works out really great. I've seen some some great like little like zines or magazines or even like small booklets released by different groups that have like nice artwork and some great things. But I'm just not sure if that would be more beneficial than actually working on the repo and like actually like having more consistency with building out the Addo, you know. It's definitely something that could come down the line. I could see like being very useful.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you both said, to be honest. And I think maybe if we started like that, Marcus got pretty consistent and really got to a point where that's so comprehensive. We could then figure out, okay, maybe, you know, this is our purpose, right? Is to publish these standards or whatever. And then that might be guiding. So you know, it's could go a good first step for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like I think
Go ahead, Sif.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say like my last thought is that I think naturally it sounded like this kind of like took a break or a hiatus, or maybe I'm just new to the group, so I'm not sure.